poor and vulnerable. The issue of social protection became topical when the Social Security Commission hosted the first ever social protection conference in Namibia under the theme Towards Comprehensive Social Protection for All. Good evening, I'm Hilda Basana-Monjebo. Tonight in Talk of the Nation, we take a look at what constitutes social protection. For this discussion, I am joined by Mr. Kenande Shivikwa, who is the Executive Officer of the Social Security Commission. Good evening, sir. Welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Thank you, Hilda, and for the interest shown by the NBC to come and talk to us about social protection. It's a matter at our heart, and we are really interested in talking about this, and we appreciate.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Secondly, I'd like to introduce to you Professor Alex van der Heever, the Chair of the Social Security Administration and Management Studies at the University of Witwatersrand. Good evening, Professor, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, Hilda, and thank you for having me.
And thirdly, I bring you a member of the civil society, Mr. Ronnie Dempers. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Thanks, Hilda.
Last but not least, Professor Marius Olivier, the Director of the Institute of Social Law and Policy. Good evening, Professor.
Thank you, Hilda. It's good to be here.
And thank you for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you watching at home, we are also joined by an audience of technocrats who will help us unpack the issue of social protection. Amongst them, we have the chairperson of the Social Security Commission Board, Mr. Johannes Kavachab, as well as some of our honorable governors from some of our great regions in the Republic of Namibia. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to Talk of the Nation. I'd like to come to you, Mr. Shivikwa, for the very first question. This is a very new phrase, social protection. We have said that it was the first ever conference held in Namibia to address this issue. Now, the way I understand it is, it means that all public and private initiatives aimed at providing income to the poor, protection of the vulnerable, uplifting the standard of living. I'd like to hear from each of you on the panel this evening. Is that your understanding, and what would be your own definition of this concept in simple words? Mr. Shivikwa.
Yes. The concept of social protection is a very broad subject, and it will take time to explain that. But to put it in a very good context, I would say it is about the systems and processes that the country can develop to protect its citizens.
And specifically,
I'm putting it now in the context that we all could understand. Now, there are schemes that are contributory, there are schemes that are non-contributory. For instance, Social Security Commission is a contributory fund. There are others that are not contributory, like the child welfare programs of the Ministry of Gender,
yes,
the old age pension, all these things. When you put all these things together, these systems, they are called social protection.
Very good. May I move on to you, Professor van der Heever, your interpretation and definition of this?
Well, societies, large societies, complex societies tend to generate a number of social distortions. And social protection is not necessarily only about addressing specific vulnerabilities and one-off instances of hardship. It is really about a system correction, a systemic correction to social imbalances that are generated as part of the normal functioning of an economy in a large society. And if we do not have these broad-based protections in place, we will actually face a number of structural distortions and social pathologies that will become endemic.
Mr. Dempers,
For me, social protection refers to those systems, practices, and policies that a society creates or develops purposefully to be able to care mainly for those that are in need and that need help and support. So for me, it is a multidimensional approach. It has got many different systems, many different parts to it, and that is the total value of those social protective systems that we are looking at.
Very good. Professor Olivier.
I think generally speaking, social protection would certainly be about protecting people socially. So what do we mean by that? In a more narrow sense, probably what we want to say is that It's protecting people in the event that they may be exposed to particular social vulnerabilities or risks, such as getting old or becoming unemployed. In a certain sense, especially if you look at the more narrow term social security, it is effectively a measure to address poverty, the possibility of becoming poor, or those who are poor to lift them out of poverty.